Story 1. The Green Mile. John Coffey. Coffey's death is heartbreaking. He is pure goodness, and watching injustice play out through him is devastating. Story 2. Have you seen Bridge to Terabithia? I didn't know the story. Story 3. Pussy Washington took a year off from the show after she died. Story 4. When they killed Glenn in The Walking Dead, it pretty much ended the show for us. I have not watched another episode since. Story 5. Someone may have already mentioned this about Artax in the Neverending Story. I saw it for the first time as a 4-year-old and never watched it again, but I still remember how sad it made me. I was bawling. Story 6. Serenity comes to mind. Wash was the funny guy. He did not have to die like that. Story 7. I cried a lot when Hooch got shot in Turner and Hooch. I probably should not have used a spoiler cover for a film that is well over 30 years old, but I did anyway. Story 8. I was born after the show aired, but I have a message. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. Spun in. There were no survivors. Story 9. The kid in Pay It Forward served no purpose and added nothing to the plot or the movie. Story 10. It's hard to pick one, but The Cat in the Boondock Saints was easily in the top 3. Story 11. I cried when John Wick's dog was killed. I cried when Will Smith had to kill his German Shepherd dog in Legend. I bawled like a baby when those assholes shot the wolf in Dances with Wolves. Story 12. Beth March in Little Women. I know it's coming, but I cry every time. Story 13. Wash in Serenity. Firefly. The series and the movie catch you completely off guard the first time you watch them. It is awful. Story 14. The original suicide scene in 13 Reasons Why, which is now edited, stayed with me for a long time. It was not that her death particularly made me sad. It was the circumstances and the image, and I was so young when I saw it. Story 15. Spoiler. Sasha from Attack on Titan was so avoidable and such a lovable character. Story 16. When Phil Hartman was killed, you could feel the absolute devastation his co-stars were experiencing on news radio. It was a gut punch. Story 17. Suk-woo is on the train to Busan. The little girl crying for him was the killer. Story 18. The ending of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas left me devastated. I cried hysterically and was traumatized for days after watching it. I still feel terrible whenever I think about the film. Story 19. This may sound odd, but it is a testament to Tom Hanks's acting skill. I was teary-eyed when his character, Chuck Noland, lost his friend Wilson, a volleyball, in the movie Cast Away. The volleyball, painted to look like a face, fell off his raft in the middle of the ocean. Chuck Noland cried in a deep and profound way. It is a moving scene in a great movie. Story 20. Bobby Nash on 911. They legitimately killed him off to add drama. Story 21. Macaulay Culkin's character in My Girl. Where are his glasses? He can't see without them. Story 22. I love The Last Jedi, but Luke Skywalker's death amounted to nothing and could have been avoided. The following movie suffered for it. Had Luke been allowed to be a character, the trilogy as a whole could have been great. Story 23. The image of the murder and suicide at the beginning of Midsommar haunted me for a week. Story 24. Optimus Prime, Transformers. The movie, 1985. I have never fully recovered. Story 25. That episode of Futurama. Dobby from Harry Potter. Story 26. I watched The Good Wife during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic and was very shocked when Will was shot and died. That makes sense since it was due to the actor wanting to leave, so it was not always part of the plan. I thought they were endgame for sure. Story 27. Terra on service-oriented architecture. I think about it every time I use a carving fork in the kitchen. Story 28. Gordo and Tracy on For All Mankind. Every death in Andor and Rogue One. Story 29. The death of John Coffey in The Green Mile gets me every time. Story 30. Beheading of Ned Stark from Game of Thrones. I was floored on the first go-around. I would have bet the story would play out like every other series, with main characters protected by plot armor. Not with George Raymond Richard Martin at the wheel. Story 31. When we watched Brian's song in school, even the meanest and toughest kids cried. Story 32. The movie that follows the Firefly series, Serenity, makes me tear up just thinking about Wash's death. I cannot watch that movie again. Story 33. Nina Tucker and Maze Hughes from Full Metal Alchemist. I have to go and cry another bucket. Story 34. The detective on Dexter was Frank Lundy, played by Keith Carradine. Story 35. Not a movie, but a book. War and Peace spoilers. Prince Andrei's death hit me really hard, as did Petia's. Story 36. Myrcella and Trystane in Game of Thrones were nice, innocent, and did not deserve it. Story 37. Lucy Knight on the emergency room. My mother let me stay home from school the next day. Story 38. The main character in Pay It Forward embodies the idea that you can help a stranger, and then they can help another person, and so on. I have been a stranger who was helped, and I have helped a few strangers. The person who helped me told me to pay it forward when I was able, after I asked how I could repay them. This is a principle I have lived by since then. The movie begins that way, and the ending affected me for a long time. Story 39. The replicant woman that Harrison Ford shoots in Blade Runner. Story 40. Wash's death in Firefly was bullshit, especially with him and Zoe just trying to start a family. To cancel the show and kill Wash like that was just so messed up. Story 41. The story of how the baby died in the cat in a bag scene from the series Them. Story 42. Old Yeller. I hate it when the hero dies, and I especially hate it when the dog dies. Story 43. There are so many, but I would say Pratt on Emergency Room was heartbreaking, and so was Gallant. Story 44. Laverne on Scrubs. I still feel sad about that. Ben on Scrubs as well. Anytime Scrubs kills a character, it affects me. Story 45. Boys Don't Cry. The ending ruined me for days. I was maybe 15 when it came out, and I was not familiar with the true story that inspired it, so I did not see it coming until it was too late. I was a wreck. Story 46. Freddy's death in Skins felt brutal and unexpected, needlessly cruel in an already depressing show. That one still hurts to think about. Story 47. I came home one night when I was still married, and my ex was crying hysterically. I asked her what was wrong, and she managed to say something about Dad. I asked if it was her dad. He wasn't exactly into healthy living. No, it was Marshall's dad on How I Met Your Mother. She had been crying for an hour and a half over a sitcom. Story 48. Warning. Spoilers for The Sopranos. Adriana from The Sopranos was a difficult character. She was surrounded by bad people but was not bad herself. Realizing her fate well before her death and dying while begging on her knees made it even sadder. A close second is Christopher. He was my favorite character. Bobby Baglieri was also very sad. Story 49. Tony Stark's death got me. I knew it was coming, but I was not prepared for it in theaters. Story 50. Off the top of my head, it is a tie between the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones and Glenn from The Walking Dead. Story 51. Neil Perry in Dead Poets Society rocked me to my core when I was 15. That is my favorite movie to this day. Story 52. Carl Grimes from The Walking Dead. If you dig into all the drama behind why the decision was made and how they treated Chandler Riggs behind the scenes at the time, not to mention that it was a narratively poor death, there is a reason why a lot of television-centric sites and content creators always list it in their stupid decisions lists. In the end, that meant the season 8 finale Wrath was the series finale for me, which, given how the show went in the later seasons, felt like a secret win despite how upset I was. Story 53. Finn Hudson from Glee. The actor's death meant the cast were dealing with grief while trying to incorporate it into the show. Story 54. Adriana on The Sopranos. I stopped watching after that and still have not seen the final season. Story 55. Howard Hamlin. Better Call Saul. He didn't deserve it. Story 56. Old Yeller, Me Before You, and Rigoletto are feature films for families. Story 57. I walked out of my living room while watching Stranger Things Season 4. When Hopper was talking about his daughter dying and they were showing hospital scenes, It hit me hard. Story 58. Fucking A. The Yellowstone bathroom scene stuck with me for days. Story 59. Nairobi from Money Heist. I don't understand how a group of trained, skilled robbers could act as if a man who threatened and promised to kill her would be shocked when he actually did. The writers made an unnecessary decision. Story 60. Herschel and Beth Green from The Walking Dead. Also Dale, Noah, Glenn, and Abraham. Story 61. The Man in the Moon when Court dies. I'm still traumatized, and I saw that in 1994 or 1995. Story 62. Matthew in Downton Abbey. I never watched another episode. I'll truly never forgive them. Story 63. Drew Sharp. He was the boy on a dirt bike in Breaking Bad who was shot and killed by Todd. Story 64. When I saw Jon Snow for the first time in Game of Thrones, I did not realize he would soon be back. Also Hughes in Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, or another version. Choose your poison. Story 65. Uncle Bob at the end of Terminator 2. That scene had me bawling as a kid. Story 66. Keith Charles from 6 Feet Under was such a flawed character, and killing him like that broke me. When David sees him catch the football right before he dies, I have an ugly cry every time. Story 67. Dinobot in Beast Wars was the first time, as a kid, that I really experienced a character I loved dying. I had not yet seen the original 1986 Transformers movie at that point, but after I did, I added Optimus Prime to the list. Story 68. When I watched The Never-Ending Story with my son for the first time, he was so upset when the horse died in the swamp. It reminded me how sad I was when I first saw it as a boy. We both cried before I could explain that it was just a story and not real life. It is one of our favorite movies now. Story 69. I thought of Joyce on Buffy the Vampire Slayer because the way it happened in the show was eerily similar to what happened in my real life a couple of years earlier. Story 70. Glenn from The Walking Dead ruined the whole show for me. I couldn't continue watching after that. Story 71. Even though they are resurrected, Kenny from the South Park franchise, Evie from The Mummy Returns, and Goku from Dragon Ball Z, particularly the second time. Story 72. Rita's storyline in Dexter Season 4 is heartbreaking. I like to rewatch Seasons 1 through 4, but I always stop at that episode. Story 73. Suicide from The Return of the Living Dead, 1985. He was the most interesting character and they killed him off first. The entire dynamic of the movie would have changed dramatically if he had survived. Story 74. John Cusack stars in The Jack Bull, a sleeper western. Excellent. Story 75. Either Ianto Jones from Torchwood or Elijah from the originals. Story 76. Justin Timberlake should have been Drake. I couldn't watch Degrassi. The Next Generation after that. Shame on all of you for not saying it first. There are 109 comments and not a single mention. What is wrong with you people? Story 77. I was pretty upset by the death of Bobby Ewing. Thankfully, he returned, freshly showered, and in perfect health. Story 78. There are two facts in life. James Bond does not die and he does not have children. Now I do not know what higher power to believe in. Story 79. Optimus Prime's death from the 1986 Transformers animated movie. Story 80. When the King died in my favorite movie, The King and I cry harder every single time. I have seen the play 3 times, and I cannot even tell you how many times I have seen the movie. Story 81. Rexplode in Invincible title card and Harrison Wells in The Flash. Story 82. The blind kid's bird in Dumb and Dumber, with its head duct taped on. Pretty bird. Story 83. This applies to the book too, but Gus and Dietz in Lonesome Dove really got me. I've always wished I could undo that. Story 84. The horses in Braveheart traumatized me. I watched that film as a child, and there is a battle scene where horses are stabbed. I am still traumatized. Story 85. Captain Anderson and Jackson West are both in The Rookie. Story 86. It was not really the death of Cedric itself, but the way his father reacted. I cry every time. Story 87. Episode 9 of Dexter, Resurrection aired over the weekend. Story 88. Our whole household was devastated when Hemmer died on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Story 89. Michael Corleone's first wife, Apollonia, is killed when her car explodes. Story 90. The most disturbing one for me was Butt from the Jungle Book 2016. I could not believe my eyes when I saw it. Story 91. George Mason from 24. The character you cannot help but dislike changes his tune and dies performing a heroic act. It hits you emotionally. Story 92. Charlie could have told Desmond about not Penny's boat without drowning. I know the actor just wanted off the show because he and Evangeline Lilly had broken up, but still. Story 93. Number 1 is probably Wallace from The Wire. Absolutely heartbreaking. Story 94. Sirius Black. I can't bring myself to watch that scene, even though I've seen the movie dozens of times. In the books, Hedwig had me bawling. Story 95. Villanelle from Killing Eve, pretending it didn't really happen and that they lived happily ever after, is how I make sense of the world. Story 96. Johnny in Sweet Tooth was utterly devastating for a character who received about 30 minutes of screen time. Story 97. Has no one else seen Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey? Story 98. In Imitation of Life, Annie dies. In The Last of the Mohicans, Magua kills Uncas and Alice leaps to her death. Story 99. The parents of the baby left on the beach in Under the Skin. Story 100. Nacho from Better Call Saul. My jaw dropped and my heart stopped. Story 101. For the times I watched them, I would say, 1. The first soldier shot in the head in Saving Private Ryan. He was trembling and shaking, terrified for his life, and then boom, the guy goes down with a headshot. I was really young when I saw that, and it bothered me for a while. 2. The father's death in Life is Beautiful. 3. Jack Sparrow in Dead Man's Chest. I loved the character and oddly related to how he low-key did like Elizabeth, unusual and unorthodox as it was. It was one of his rare, earnest vulnerabilities that he did not really entertain until she made him believe it. The fact that it happened because she was the only one who genuinely wanted him dead, while everyone else had an eye-rolling, "I swear I'm gonna kill this guy," or, "If he dies I won't be too sad, but I won't actually do it" attitude, and she actually did it in a treacherous way that left him helpless, was just so upsetting to me. He really tried to get out, but he lost and died bravely. 4. Robert Pattinson's character in Tenet. I might have been on some mood-enhancing substances, but I felt so bad for the guy, knowingly going into his own death that we had already seen. 5. James Bond in No Time to Die. I did not like that at all. It was very antithetical to everything I like about Bond and what I go to for escapism. He had been Bond for about half my life at the time, so it was even more crushing to see another thing come to an end, at the tail end of the coronavirus pandemic when so many other things I loved in my life had also come to an end. Depression followed. I think there is some other death that really messed me up when I was younger, but I may be blocking it out. Story 102. Sweets in Bones. I watch the show all the time, but that moment just sucks and it is so sad. Story 103. I watched a movie back in the day called The Passion of the Christ. When they were killing off the main character, I thought, are you kidding me? This is how this is going to end. I still don't get why they wrote it that way. Story 104. Not me personally, but one of my coworkers was a big fan of Martin Sheen and The West Wing. You can imagine how upset he was by what happened to him in The Departed. Story 105. Jack Pearson from This Is Us. Too close to my own experience. Story 106. My Girl. Read the book first, though, and as a kid, it wrecked me. Story 107. Andrei Bolkonsky from War and Peace had so much integrity, but happiness eluded him. Story 108. Bjork's character Selma in Dancer in the Dark. I can't watch that movie again. Story 109. King Theoden. I watched Lord of the Rings with my husband for the first time and told him how much I loved that character. He knew it was coming and did not want to spoil it. I have never cried that hard at the death of a character in anything else. Story 110. Rita's rape in Dexter caught me off guard. I felt so bad for her kids. Story 111. Lance Reddick in John Wick 4. Watching his character die a week after he died in real life was rough. Story 112. Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems left my wife and me in shock for a couple of days. My jaw literally dropped for a few minutes. I felt anxious throughout the whole movie, and I was really happy that his character finally got a break. And then, thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.